Good morning, and thank you guys for joining this session. Kind of curious about how you selected your interest for this topic, and I've served as a distance learning leader at a couple of different universities, and these two issues have been issues at all of the schools with which I've been associated. So I'm kind of curious if you'll press 1 and raise your hand if you would like to see the retention rate among your online students is higher. Press 1. Yeah, looks like we've got several hands going up for that. We'd all love to keep our students. Was on the campus last week of a really large distance learning program, and they've gotten pretty good. They do lots of national advertising. They've learned how to recruit students, and it's getting easier to get them in the front door, but it's also easy for students to go out the back door. And so online student retention is a challenge for many of us. And also press 1, raise your hand if you guys have some proctored exams that you give to your online students. And that could be proctoring through any one of multiple modalities. That's either proctoring in a local testing center, proctoring through virtual proctoring, or proctoring as maybe the teacher themselves serving as the proctor. So if you do proctoring of your exams, raise your hand by pressing 1. Okay. Well, those of you that raised your hand know that this entire proctoring process is really challenging. There's so many different steps in the workflow, and so what I'll be sharing with you today are 2 different tools that you can use to help in your student success program and to foster better retention rates, as well as to solve that problem of the workflow in the proctoring process. Well, let me start out by asking you a question. How does your school determine who is enrolled? Well, typically, you screen based on cognitive indicators of success, things like standardized test scores, prior grade point averages, admissions exams. Those are the ways that you determine if a student has the proper levels of aptitude to be enrolled at your institution. And this is, backed up by the National Association of Christian Admission Counseling. They say that these are the factors that most schools are looking for to get in. But the second question is, why do students drop out? Well, you guys know that Bill Gates wants to solve all the world's problems, and one of the problems that he wants to solve is this issue of college student retention, because he knows that the #1 way to break the cycle of poverty is to get students enrolled in college and to keep them enrolled in college through to program or degree completion. And even our current president recognizes that, and that's why he's interested in these different initiatives to make college more affordable for persons, because getting students to complete that college experience not only teaches them, but it gives them a credential that can open many doors and break that cycle of poverty. So a couple of years ago, Bill Gates did a study where they did exit interviews and post-exit interviews with thousands of students who had started college, but then they dropped out. And he said, why was it? Why did you start something and not finish it? And then if you look at these reasons they gave, were reasons like, conflicts with work schedule. I just couldn't afford it. I did not have enough support from my family, which could be financial support, or maybe just not enough practical support, such as babysitting, or maybe just a lack of belief that the college degree would be valuable, or maybe a lack of discipline. Those are all of the reasons, the top reasons that study the Gates Foundation did. And when you look at that list of reasons, what jumps out is that all of these reasons are non-cognitive reasons. It's not that the student was not smart enough to go to college, but it was because life happened. Well, here's a statistic that was put together by the Education Policy Institute a couple of years ago, and this is the national average. It may vary, by your institution, but based on the typical tuition rates at most schools, every time your school loses a student, that costs your school $13,772. So retention quickly translates into lost revenue for your organization. So do you see the disconnect? That we screen for students on the front end, we let them in based on cognitive indicators of success, yet they drop out because of non-cognitive factors. So are our schools really measuring what matters? Don't we need to be measuring more of those non-cognitive indicators of success? Well, to find out about these non-cognitive indicators, let's look at a few different stakeholder groups. There's an organization called the National Association of Colleges and Employers, and this group does a study every 2 years where they ask employers who are hiring students straight out of college what are the traits and the attributes and the skills that you're looking for in our college graduates? And when you look at this list, and I know that this slide deck, when it's on this little small screen here in the virtual world, maybe you can't read these slides, but I would encourage you afterwards, if this is of interest to you, to go up to the document repository there in the back of the room. You can download this presentation so you can see these slides better. But when you look at this list, the number one thing that employers of college students said that they're looking for is communication skills, followed by honesty and integrity, interpersonal skills, strong work ethic, teamwork skills, motivation, initiative. And so when you look at this full list, the traits and the attributes and the skills that employers are seeking are all non-cognitive skills. So non-cognitive skills are very, very important. A few years ago, Michigan State University did a meta-analysis of the mission statement of several institutions where they looked at the key words that were recurring in our mission statements. And when you look at this list, the words in red really pull out the different non-cognitive aspects of our university's mission statements. Things like fostering curiosity, cultural appreciation, appreciation for diversity, leadership, interpersonal skills. So it's even congruent with the mission of our institutions to foster and to grow students in these areas of non-cognitive traits and attributes. There was a study done last year that some of you in this room may have even responded to by the Western Cooperative for Technology and Education, and they surveyed 81 different distance learning leaders, and they said, what are the most important characteristics that are required for success in your online programs? And look at the answers you guys gave. Motivation, commitment, time management, technology skills, reading skills, study habit skills, writing skills, lifestyle compatibility, independence, and listening skills. So you guys said, as distance learning leaders, it takes these non-cognitive skills to be successful in our program. I remember when I first read this study, I almost jumped out of my seat and said, Eureka, because that's exactly, these 10 things are all things that our assessment is measuring. There are several different organizations such as the National Research Council, and then after that the U.S. Department of Education, who recently have put out studies about the importance of non-cognitive traits and attributes and skills. And I recognize you can't read the text on this, so I'm going to share it with you because the wording of it is so salient. And remember, this is from the Department of Education. And they said the test score and accountability movement and conventional educational approaches tend to focus on the intellectual aspects of success, such as content knowledge. However, this is not sufficient. If students are to achieve their full potential, they must have opportunities to engage and develop a much richer set of skills. There is a growing movement to explore the potential of non-cognitive factors, attributes, dispositions, social skills, attitudes, and intrapersonal resources that are independent of intellectual ability, that high-achieving individuals draw upon to accomplish success. So this is the Department of Education calling on all schools at the secondary and post-secondary level to do a better job of not only measuring but also fostering growth within non-cognitive areas. And if you think back, even your parents taught this. My mom did not have a copy of See You Later, Procrastinator, but if she did, I'm sure she would have encouraged me to read it. But I do remember books like The Little Engine That Could, that teach us persistence, and The Tortoise and the Hare, that teach us to stick with it when the going gets tough. And so even when we're teaching our young children, we try to foster these non-cognitive traits. But it makes you wonder, do you remember your kindergarten report card? Remember how it asked things like plays well with others? Why did we stop measuring and reporting those non-cognitive factors after kindergarten? Then when we got into grade school, our report cards turned to quantitative metrics of cognitive ability. Well, and that's vastly important, but also the non-cognitive things are important, and we need to keep on measuring and reporting those. So are you beginning to see the picture that non-cognitive traits and attributes and skills really do matter? They determine student retention, they influence employer satisfaction, they determine online course success. Federal agencies such as the Department of Ed recognize their importance, they're congruent with the mission of your schools, and even your parents view them. So non-cognitive traits are truly important. When you read literature in this area about non-cognitive traits, one of the landmark studies is this Bowles reference from 2001. And basically what this study is saying, and think about this in relation to your job today. Think about all of the tasks you're going to do today. The Bowles study said that 80% of what you do in your work world today is going to be dependent on your non-cognitive skills. And only 20% is going to be dependent on your cognitive skills, or what you know about your job. But the rest of your success is dependent on your non-cognitive abilities. I really like the mental model that a faculty member at one of our client institutions shared recently. He was a professor of human management, and he said, in this art and science of managing humans to do anything, there are three different constructs that are used to predict human success. First is aptitude. There are some things you must know, but equally important, he emphasized, was attitude and situation. And it's these attitudinal and situational factors that are the non-cognitive traits that we're concerned about. So what are non-cognitive skills? Well, words like these come to mind: persistence and motivation and procrastination. And it raises the question, well, can non-cognitive skills be taught, or can they be remediated? And I really like the mental model that one of our client schools recently used. They says, you know what? Maybe you cannot change a tiger's stripes, but you can teach that tiger to hunt in a different environment. And that's the approach that we take when we measure these non-cognitive skills, is that it's not all about quickly thinking that we can remediate this through some 3-week orientation course, but it's using the assessment as a lens to hold up a mirror to that tiger and say, okay, Mr. Tiger, here's what you look like. You're prone to procrastinate, but here's what a tiger like you who's prone to procrastinate can do to help yourself be successful within this jungle that we call online learning. So what are some of the usages of non-cognitive data once you've collected? Well, first of all, is that lens. It's that mirror that you hold up to that student to help them understand themselves. And this is very useful as a student service. Many schools use this data to help place students in developmental or remedial courses. And one of the best usage is as a talking point for academic advisors. Some of you may currently serve or have served as an academic advisor, and you know that you need some rich content to enrich that conversation that you have with students. If you have a student come in for advising and all that you have are some demographic factors and maybe their grade point averages, what can you say to that student? But if you have a deep set of data about their non-cognitive traits and motivation and procrastination and willingness to ask for help and technology competency and time management, then you've got a depth of data that can enrich some meaningful, substantive conversations with those students. Some schools use it as an early alert to identify students who are at a greater risk of dropping out or not doing well in a course. And in that mode, they become a very useful predictive analytic. And many of our schools have embedded this data into their lead score metrics. So the assessment that I'm talking about is the Smarter Measure Learning Readiness Indicator. If you're not familiar with it, it's a 124-item assessment that measures non-cognitive traits and attributes and skills. It's been used by over 500 colleges and universities, and recently we had over our 3 millionth student to take the assessment. It's been around now for over 12 years, so it's a deeply validated, deeply vetted assessment. It's in a really evolved assessment engine. So what does the assessment measure? We start out looking at the student internally, and we call these individual attributes. And these are things like motivation, procrastination, willingness to ask for help, things that almost define the learner's learning personality. While we're looking at them internally, we also identify their dominant learning styles, which is based on the multiple intelligences model. So that's whether you're visual, verbal, social, solitary, those things. Now, as the prior speaker said, there's a variety of opinions about learning styles. But the consensus is it's important for a student to understand their learning styles, and it's important for instructional designers and faculty members to try to teach to all learning styles. But mostly it's just one other facet, one other way to let that tiger see its stripes and to be able to plan, how to hunt in this environment. After we've looked at the student internally, then we look at some external factors. We call those life factors. These are things like how much time do they have available for studying? Do they have a dedicated place for studying? Do they have a good reason for going back to school? Do they have support from family and employers? How about health? How about finances? So it's really an environmental scan of what's happening in the student's world. And you guys know that so many times the reasons why students drop out of your program is not because of any weakness in your program. Not because of any academic weakness on the part of the student, but it's because life happens. And can we prevent life happening? No. But what we can do is we can make a student aware as they're coming into our program that life's going to happen, and how are you going to go ahead and be preparing to respond to that while still continuing your education? After we've looked at the student internally and externally, then we measure some skills. We start with their technology skills, how well can you use a computer, how well can you use online resources, some information literacy type questions. We collect data about the primary computer that the student will be using. We collect data about their type of internet access. We look at the degree to which technology is integrated into their life. In addition to their technology skills, we also measure their keyboarding abilities, and then we also measure their on-screen reading rate and recall. So this is our full spectrum of non-cognitive skills. A few years ago, we had several schools that says, you know, we really love your assessment engine, and at the same time that we measure these non-cognitive traits, we'd love to get a 30,000-foot view of their abilities with math and writing. So we actually now have added 2 cognitive constructs to our assessment battery, and so we do have a college-level math readiness assessment and a college-level writing readiness assessment as well. So I'm going to show you, and I realize you guys can't see this very well on the screen up in front of the room, so I'll move quickly through these screen captures, but just so that you can get a little bit of feel for this, we'd love to show you this more in depth, but the assessment is provided in a custom user interface that's branded with your school's identity. This is a mode here where it's just in a browser, but it also can be integrated into your learning management system so that they take the assessment from within the learning management system. Here on this screen, you see several things about the student experience. We've done quite a bit of work to ensure ADA compliance, so they can change the font size. We've done quite a bit of testing with screen readers. They're always one click away from our help desk system, and they also can start and stop it, so a student does not have to take the full battery of assessments at one sitting if they choose to. Just another view of what the student experience of the assessment would look like. Here's a view of how the results are reported back to the student. It's very graphical and very colorful to help them interpret and understand their scores. And then when you get to the parts of the score report where there is text, all of the text is dependent on the student's score. So at every 20 points on the 0 to 100 scale, the text is reflective of what they made. So each student's score report is unique and individual. This is a view that faculty members or administrators would see, and what these blue and green and red icons indicate are high levels of readiness, medium levels of readiness, and low levels of readiness. So this helps a faculty member or administrator target the students who need to be reached out to support them, to help them succeed and persist. Just another view of that same data. Our assessment engine makes aggregate reports such as this demographic report here. The assessment engine also computes all of your measures of central tendencies such as mean, median, mode, standard deviation, and variance. So it's very easy for you, like this would be a listing of all of the scales and subscales that we measure. So in this particular one, for this data set, time was the lowest. So if this was your group of students and you were designing your orientation course, then you would know we really need to focus on how does the student manage the time that they have available to them. Just another view showing the distribution of that high and medium and low levels of readiness, which you can change your cut points, your set points to determine placement in high, medium, and low. We call that adjusting the readiness ranges. So how do schools use this assessment? It's very common for schools to embed it as an assignment in an orientation course. Other schools put it in the onboarding process through enrollment management. Some just make it available to students through webinars or their website or put it in academic courses. And while this assessment started out as a readiness for online learning, now about 70% of our schools use it for school students broader than just their distance learning students. One of the things that we talk to with our clients is this, what I call the thermometer analogy. And those of you who are parents know that you can tell intuitively when your child is getting sick, but you want to know for sure. So you take out a thermometer and you take their temperature. If it's a 99, you give them some Tylenol. If it's a 104, well, then you're going to the pediatrician. So should you as a parent feel good about the fact that you used a thermometer? Well, maybe. But what you really need to feel good about is the fact that you used the data from that thermometer to take appropriate action. So we tell our client institutions, don't rest on your laurels and don't pat yourself on the back just because you used our assessment. What you need to do is take the data from the assessment to take appropriate action with each student. So I'll share with you a little bit of some of the results of some research that we've done at a few different schools. You may be wondering, well, does this matter? Does it make a difference? What's the return on investment if I do an assessment like that with my students? And one very clear study was at Middlesex Community College, and I recognize you may not be able to see these numbers very well, but back before they started using Smarter Measure, they were having a 31 to 33% failure rate in their online courses, and they define failure as someone who made a D, F, or they dropped out of the online course. So they said, hey, 1/3 of our students aren't making it. What's going on? And so the green line indicates when they started using our assessment to collect data about their students, then they created what they called a culture of success. They put up posters all around campus. They really increased awareness of the different resources that they provided to students to help them be successful. They beefed up their academic advising using the data that we were providing. And through that, they saw substantial gains. So like in a 2-year period of time, they dropped it from 31% down to 24% in the spring, from 33% to 27% there in the fall. And so those were several percentage point gains in their retention rate in their online courses. And remember that figure of $13,000 something per student? So that quickly turns into a great return on investment. Another school, J. Sargent Reynolds Community College, which some of you are familiar with, they embed Smarter Measure into their what am I trying to say here? There is a thing that Southern Association requires you to do, your quality enhancement plan. Yeah, and so at the beginning of their QEP, they collected some baseline data. And remember that thing that declared students at being at a high, medium, or low level of readiness? They did an analysis, and of all of their students who were at a low level of readiness in one of our constructs, less than 10% of those students at a low level of readiness experienced academic success. And so that low indicator was truly indicative of students who would be struggling in their programs. Career Education Corporation, a large for-profit school, did a very large correlational analysis. They wanted to know what is the relationship between these non-cognitive factors that we're measuring and then key student performance indicators like academic achievement, engagement, and retention. And the X's in that table indicate a statistically significant relationship between those two. And when you look at that, what jumps out at you is that engagement is tightly correlated with these non-cognitive indicators. And so if you were in this room for our keynote speech, the first hour, he talked a lot about engagement and how to keep students engaged in their learning. And when you think about these constructs that we're measuring of motivation and procrastination and willingness to ask for help and technology competency, those things are tightly related to how engaged your students are going to be. Also there at Career Ed, they produced or computed rather classification accuracies, and they produced a 73% classification accuracy for retention. So 7 out of 10 times they were able to accurately predict which students would be retained based on this non-cognitive data. And engagement was even higher than that. More than 9 out of 10 times they could predict which students would be engaged at what level using these non-cognitive figures. Another very large for-profit institution, they use this very early in their student recruiting funnel. They provide 8 different segments of the assessment to students, and what they've seen is that students who self-select to take 7 or 8 sections of our assessment are much more likely to proceed all the way through their enrollment funnel and then to persist for 2 terms out. So students who self-select to take the assessment, that's showing you that they are the diligent students. So That's the SMARTER measure, learning readiness indicator. It measures non-cognitive traits and attributes and skills to help the student understand what they look like as a tiger, to help schools have rich conversations with that student to show them that how they can be successful hunting in this environment of online learning. So if that's of interest to you, come by our booth, SmarterServices. We're just down at the bottom of the stairs. We're going to have people there throughout this conference, and we'd love to tell you more about this assessment and set up a demo to it. Now, the second problem that some of you said that you were interested in, is this problem of organizing the proctoring process. Well, are you tired? If you have anything to do with the proctoring process at your school, you probably feel sometimes like this lady. You're just exhausted at all of the balls that you have to keep in the air with all of the tasks associated with proctoring. You also may relate to this little figure that you know that the devil is in the details when it comes to proctoring. You see that most schools provide multiple proctoring options for their students. They say, hey, you can take your test in our local testing center. Or if you live in another city, you can go to a testing center of a university in your city. Or they may say, hey, the faculty member himself or herself is going to proctor the exam next Saturday in a computer lab on campus. Or maybe your school allows for virtual proctoring. Or maybe you allow for human proctoring through approved persons. So you'll provide multiple modalities for your students to choose, but guess what? For each of those modalities, there's a different workflow. If they're going to be going to your local testing center, well, they've got to schedule it. If they're going to be going to a human proctor, they've got to find a human proctor that meets your criteria. Someone at your school has to vet that proctor. Then you've got to schedule the time with the proctor. If you're going to be using virtual proctoring, you've got to make sure that your computer can handle the technology, that you have enough bandwidth, that you have the software downloaded. So there's so many balls to keep in the air. The devil is certainly in the details of managing this proctoring process. So what we saw a need to develop as we talked with our client institutions was something that doesn't exist yet. This is the first of its kind. It's a proctoring process management system. So what is that? Well, let me tell you a little bit more about it. So this is what we discussed before. What are the testing options at your school? Maybe virtual, maybe human. And my question to you is, who organizes the workflow for each of those? What we're finding is that many schools, the onus of responsibility is left with the faculty member to organize that workflow. At other schools, they do have e-learning staff who do this, but they often manage it using spreadsheets or cumbersome databases. So smarter proctoring is sometimes best understood by defining what it's not. Well, we are not another proctoring technology. We don't proctor a single test. We are not a virtual proctoring company such as Be Virtual. We also are not a student authentication solution like Authentify or biometric signature. We're also not testing integrity software like Respondus or ExamSoft, but we work with all of these other products, and many of them are integrated tightly into this solution. We make the process of coordinating it better. So Smarter Proctoring is software that works within your LMS to give 100% visibility to your faculty, to your students, to your administrators, to your proctors, so that they can see exactly how each student will be taking their test, and they see exactly where each student is in the workflow for that proctoring modality that they've selected, and it automates the communication with the student each step of the way. It's sending the student email reminders and text reminders if they opted into that, to make sure that the student is staying on task as the event of proctoring their exam approaches. So what are needs associated with proctoring? Well, schools needed a system to help them schedule at test centers. They needed to schedule virtual proctoring. They needed to schedule human proctors. They need to be able to efficiently and securely handle payment for all of that. They needed a way that incident reporting, if there was some exceptionality that happened during the testing session, could easily be reported back, and all of that communication needed to be archived. In addition to that, wouldn't it be great if there was a database of pre-vetted human proctors that could be pulled from if needed? Well, all of those things are components of this smarter proctoring. As one school put it, smarter proctoring is like the Travelocity of proctoring services. We help you organize and select all of the different options that are available for proctoring. So how do we organize the proctoring process? Well, there's dashboards that monitor the student's progress each step of the way. We archive all the communication. We manage multiple proctoring types, as I've said, and all of it is integrated with our partners, such as bVirtual, Register Blast, Proctor Free, and Proctor Cam. As I mentioned, there is a rapidly growing database of human proctors. Every school that signs on brings their set of human proctors to it, and so it grows. The proctors can be vetted by your selection criteria because each school has its own criteria for what makes proctors important. All of our human proctors are verified through third-party verification. We've already made sure that this is a real person, that it's not a straw man that the student has set up. So if your school would love to be able to offer your students multiple proctoring options, have a system that organizes the process, have confidence that your students' exams are being taken securely, and know where each student is in the process, then this umbrella solution of smarter proctoring may be a good fit for you. So the tools included in it are the dashboard that shows the faculty member exactly what the student's doing, the exam configuration panel that allows the faculty member to communicate very minute details like what do you do with the scratch paper after a math test. Those kinds of details are communicated to the proctor. We have the database of human proctors as well as the seamless integration with other companies. In fact, we formed a consortium. This is kind of a new thing. For years, you've heard of schools, maybe schools within a state or schools across several states forming a consortium so that you bundle together all of your knowledge and all of your resources so you can serve your students better. Well, there are 4 of us companies that are all in this space that provide complementary products. And so we've made a commitment to each company that as we develop our products, that they'll continue to work seamlessly together. We've got a commitment where we do some revenue sharing with our contracts. That's why, as you may have seen on a slide earlier, smarter proctoring can be offered at no cost to your institution because we've got rev share agreements with other companies such as bVirtual, which is a virtual proctoring provider, so that there's no cost for this organization tool. So I'm going to show you a few screen captures, and again, you're not going to be able to see this, but this is just going to give you a little bit of a view. I do encourage you to download this slide deck. It's in the back of this room. It's also in our booth out in the lobby if you want to see it. But we'd really love to do a demonstration for you so that you can see it. This is a faculty dashboard. This is showing you where each student is along each step of the way. It shows you for each student on your roster exactly where they are in the process. This is a drill down view of that. So there on the left, the blue words would be your list of students, and then it's color coded to show where they are in each step of the way. You can drill down further to get more details and to communicate with the student. An example of the exam configuration panel where you're setting up all of those details about how do you handle scrap paper and what types of calculators can be allowed, all of those different things. And then administrators and faculty have different views. So this is a multi-course view that maybe be like in an enterprise-wide solution. So if you're an e-learning administrator, this would be a list of all of your e-learning courses, and it would be showing you across the top how many students are going to be proctoring by what methodology and where are they in that workflow. Student view walks them through kind of in a very easy sort of a following the yellow brick road path of exactly what they do. Students only see proctoring options that are provided first at the school level and then second at the faculty member level. So we're not, providing other options that your school doesn't approve. One of our slogans is proctoring your way, not ours. So there's different proctoring types that a student could choose, and again, they would only see the proctoring types that your school has pre-approved. If they're going to be using a human proctor, our system knows the student's zip code, and it will show the proctors who are in their area. It shows a lot of information about the proctor and what they have at their facility. If there's, access for individuals that need access because of disabilities or whatever, shows their rate, several different things about the proctor, what technology they have available. All of the communication between the faculty member and the student and the proctor is all archived. For testing centers, there's quite a bit of visibility. We tightly integrate with Register Blast, which is the premier test center scheduling software. So without ever leaving the learning management system, the student can schedule a session with a local testing center. They can schedule a virtual proctoring session. They can schedule a session with a human proctor, all right there from within the course, because Smarter Proctoring is embedded within your online course. So those are just different views of what the testing centers would see. All of the payment history is viewed there. There's some things about our network. We partner with a company called Be Virtual, which we think is the strongest provider of virtual proctoring. They've been around for several years in the help desk area. They're now providing virtual proctoring, have been for about 2 different years. They were recently selected by the College Board to be the exclusive provider of virtual proctoring for the AccuPlacer exam. They 100% record everything. They will white label their virtual proctoring so that you don't have to tell students, hey, go to this third-party company for virtual proctoring. You say, hey, use our university's virtual proctoring system. And so there's not that confusion among students. They do not do a one-size-fits-all approach. They can do custom deployments of different ways to provide the proctoring. They can provide scheduled proctoring or even proctoring on demand. All of their proctors have at least a college degree, and they're very competitive in their pricing. They will match or beat any written pricing proposal for virtual proctoring services. So we're very pleased to be partnering with Be Virtual in providing Smarter Proctoring. There's contact information for Andrew Davis, who is our Smarter Proctoring Project Coordinator, and he would be glad to share information with you. And that's just general information about our company. So we're about... Looks like about 6 minutes away from the scheduled time to end this session, so I will allow you guys, if you have any questions or comments, move back to the 2 microphones in the room, and if you stand in that circle at the base of that microphone, then everyone else in the room, including myself, can hear the comments that you have. Okay, I'll hang out here for a while. If some of you want to come up to me individually, and we've also got people out in our booth later, we'd love to tell you more about these solutions. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mac. That was great.